I don't remember my first communion. That is the actual event called First Communion. I was raised in a Christian tradition that had us waiting until we were 7 or 8 years old before we could participate in or receive communion. And I know I was supposed to have learned what communion meant back then, but to be honest, I don't really remember what all that was. I do remember some rules, learning some do's and do not do's, and things that I should avoid to not get in trouble. But even though I participated in something called communion, I don't think I really appreciated communion until I was much older. And even now, I still find myself surprised about what I've missed. And it's okay to miss things. I don't think the disciples really understood what was happening either. Now, after all kinds of theological training, writing, and teaching, working in churches, I more and more appreciate just how unlikely it is that we, meaning Christians, get to do communion, that we serve as hosts or even just facilitate communion. I think we're just as unlikely as any of those first disciples who didn't really know what was going on. I mean, they were the ones who ditched Jesus, who ran away when he needed them most. They didn't get what he was doing most of the time. They always missed the point of his teaching. They handed him over to be killed. What did they think they were doing that first communion, that Last Supper? And who did they think they were to get to sit there with Jesus? If we're anything like those people, what do we think we're doing? It can't be because we deserve it. It can't be because we earned a spot at the table. If we think that, we're fooling ourselves. And to me, that's the heart of that first communion and communion now. Not fooling ourselves, but being able to participate because of who God is and what God does, not because of who we are to earn a place at the table. That Last Supper and what we do now for communion is a reminder of God's doing. And I think it's the model or a form of how creation should be ordered. The early church used the symbol of bread and fish because it was a reminder of how Jesus takes care of us, how it's Jesus' generosity that provides for everyone. It's not only the unlikely disciples who get to eat with Jesus, it's all of us. I mean, all of us, everybody. We get to share in the abundance of creation. To get to sit at the table with Jesus, to have been served by him, to be hosted, all of that is grace. And to think that it can be that way now, that communion is a reminder of the order we get to make in the world. That's the heart of communion. And it can be so tempting to erase all of that. In the same way we might be tempted to think we've invited ourselves to the table, that we have somehow earned our spot right next to Jesus. It's easy to focus only on our efforts. I mean, we might literally think we put food on the table. We overlook the interconnections of sun and rain and dirt, fertilizer and work and time and people and our ingenuity and creativity and talent, all the things that make just a loaf of bread possible. We so easily and quickly take that for granted, or worse, assume it's ours to take hold of, to own and control. Communion is very visceral to me. It's a sign of how God joins us in the real day-to-day, just as we are, even if we're still like the worst of the disciples. And it's because that's how God is. It's God's decision. It's God's work to join us in communion. Even though I didn't quite get it when I was a little kid, and even though I still amaze myself at what I don't get, that's okay. In fact, that might be how it's supposed to be.